But the problem is that the business grew, but the operating model did not change. If you're running a SaaS business between 10 and 30 million in annual recurring revenue, and you're thinking about raising a Series B, taking on private equity investment, or positioning for an exit in the next 12 to 24 months, this is the most important 15 minutes that you'll spend this week. I'm going to walk you through exactly what structural maturity means at your stage, why it matters for capital events, and what you can do about it before a diligence team finds the gaps for you. My name's Anthony Draper. I spent 11 years in the military. I was in special ops working in signal intelligence and electronic warfare. And when I left, I actually ended up spending 15 years in senior corporate roles at HP and Capital, managing portfolios of up to £750 million and delivering 300 million in operational savings. And for the past several years, I've worked exclusively with SaaS leadership teams, assessing and strengthening the operating structures that sit underneath the revenue line. Not the product, not the go-to-market, the structural architecture that determines whether the business can perform independently of its founder. And that is what diligence teams are assessing. And in most SaaS businesses at this stage, that is where the exposure sits. Let me explain what I mean. So every business that's grown from 2 million to 10, 15, 20 million in revenue has done so on the back of its founder. The founder's judgment, the founder's standards, the founder's decision-making, the founder's relationships. And that is how it should work in the early stages. Centralized decision-making at 2 million is efficient and it's correct. The founder has context that nobody else has. Decisions are fast because one person holds all the information. Quality is consistent because one person defines it in real time. But the problem is that the business grew, but the operating model did not change. So at 10 million, 15, 20 million, you now have 30 or 40 or 50 people who need access to the context that still lives in one person's head. Decisions are still fast when the founder's available, but when they're not, everything pauses. Quality is still high when the founder's watching, but it varies when they're not. This is not a failure, it's a stage. The architecture that was appropriate for one level of complexity is being asked to handle another, and it's showing strain. The strain shows up in specific ways that a diligence team will identify. The first area is decision governance. In most SaaS businesses that I assess between 10 and 30 million, there is no documented framework defining who can decide what, at what level, and under what conditions. Every material decision routes to the founder by default, not because the team lacks capability, because the structure has never formally distributed authority. A diligence team will call this a governance gap, and it signals that the business cannot demonstrate institutional decision-making. That finding affects how buyers and investors assess operational resilience. The second area is accountability architecture. Senior leaders have titles and reporting lines, but in practice, accountability terminates at the founder. The leadership layer looks institutional on paper. Under scrutiny, it is cosmetic. Leaders defer upward on anything material because the structure has never given them explicit permission to act autonomously. And this surfaces as transition risk. If the founder exits post-acquisition, can this leadership team step in and take genuine ownership? If they have spent years deferring every significant decision, the answer is uncertain, and uncertainty is priced into that transaction. The third area is operational visibility. The founder is the information system. They know what is happening because they're embedded in everything, not because a structured reporting cadence surfaces it. When the founder steps back, visibility drops because the business has no independent mechanism for surfacing what matters. Diligence teams assess this through forecast reliability. Can the business demonstrate a visible connection between operational metrics and financial projections? If the answer depends on the founder's intuition rather than auditable reporting, that is a finding. The fourth area is key person concentration risk. This is the summary finding that captures all of the above. If decision governance, accountability, and operational visibility all depend on a single individual, the business carries concentration risk at the institutional level. That's the most significant structural finding in any diligence process, and it directly affects valuation and deal structure. So what do you do about it? There are 4 structural pillars that I install in every engagement. The first is a decision governance framework. This is a documented structure that defines who owns which decisions, at what threshold, and under what conditions decisions escalate. It's typically a 1-page with 3 columns: decision type, named authority, escalation trigger. It takes about 3 hours to build with the leadership team. In every business where I've installed this, the founder's weekly decision volume drops by 40 to 60% in the first week. But the operational benefit is secondary. The strategic benefit is that the business can now demonstrate in writing that decisions are made at defined levels by named individuals within documented parameters. That is institutional governance, and that is what diligence teams assess. The second pillar is accountability architecture. This takes the existing leadership structure and installs genuine ownership boundaries, not new titles, defined authority. Each senior leader gets explicit decision rights within their domain, with specific escalation criteria that tell them exactly when something should move upward. The effect is that the leadership layer begins to function as an operating tier, not a reporting tier. And under diligence, this evidences management capability independent of the founder. The third pillar is an executive operating cadence. This is a structured rhythm of meetings that drives accountability and surfaces problems without embedding the founder in operations. Typically, a weekly leadership meeting with a defined scorecard, stuck items protocol, commitments review, and action capture. This replaces the founder as the information system. Information flows through a designed rhythm rather than through random interruptions. It also produces auditable evidence of operational grip, which is exactly what the boards and the investors want to see. And then the fourth pillar is reporting architecture. This replaces dashboards that tell you what happened with reporting that tells you what to do next. A defined set of leading indicators owned by named individuals, reviewed in a structured cadence with clear response and response thresholds. When pipeline velocity drops below a specific level, VP of sales owns the response. When client health score declines for 2 consecutive periods, the VP of customer success escalates. The report does not just inform, it triggers action. In a diligence context, this evidences forecast reliability. The business can demonstrate that it tracks what matters, that named people own those metrics, and that deviations from target produce a defined response. And these 4 pillars taken together are what I mean by structural maturity. They are the operating architecture that sits underneath the revenue line and determines whether the business can sustain performance under new ownership. Now let me tell you what the process looks like in practice. Every engagement starts with a Capital Readiness Conversation. That's a 30-minute call, no presentation, no proposal, no sales pitch. I ask you direct questions about how your business operates, how decisions are made, where accountability sits, what happens when you step back, what your reporting tells you versus what you actually know. I give you an honest read on where your structural exposure sits, and if there are no material gaps, I'll tell you. If there are, I'll tell you what it would take to close them and what a diligence team is looking to find if you do not. If it makes sense to work together, I scope the engagement, typically a 90-day structural installation, sometimes ongoing support through a capital process. The work is designed to be finite. It installs into the operating rhythm of the business and persists after I leave. I do not do coaching calls. I do not do motivational sessions. I do not produce strategy decks that nobody implements. This is structural work, installed, tested, and evidenced. Let me be direct about who this is for. If you're running a SaaS business between 10 and 30 million in revenue with a team of 20 to 70 people, and you are approaching or considering a capital event in the next 12 to 24 months, this work is relevant. If your business has reached the stage where the model that built it is no longer the model that will withstand external scrutiny, and you recognize that, this is the conversation to have. The businesses that get the strongest terms in capital events are the ones that have addressed structural maturity before the process began. Not during, before. They did not scramble to close governance gaps while a diligence team was watching. They actually installed the architecture, tested it, and let the evidence speak for itself. If any of what I have described sounds familiar, the Capital Readiness Conversation is the starting point. 30 minutes, an honest structural read, no obligation. The link is in the description below.